Donny Hathaway, the soulful genius behind timeless classics like A Song for You and This Christmas, was beloved for his velvet voice and raw emotion. But behind his gentle stage presence was a storm few ever saw. In a recently uncovered diary, hidden for decades, Hathaway revealed the names of 5 singers he secretly despised. These weren't just professional rivalries, they were deep-rooted frustrations, personal betrayals, and artistic disillusionments. Known for his mental health struggles and sensitivity to authenticity in music, Donny's confessions are shocking, brutally honest, and unlike anything fans expected. These weren't just opinions, they were wounds etched in ink. Born on October 1, 1945, in Chicago, Donny Hathaway was raised in St. Louis, Missouri, by his grandmother, Martha Pitts, a professional gospel singer. From a young age, Hathaway was immersed in church music and quickly became a child prodigy. He began playing piano at just 3 years old and was singing gospel by the age of 5. His talent caught the attention of music teachers, and he earned a scholarship to the prestigious Howard University in Washington, D.C., where he studied music alongside future legends like Roberta Flack. Though he left college before graduating, Hathaway's time at Howard shaped his understanding of music's emotional depth and spiritual power. He began working as a session musician, producer, and arranger before stepping into the spotlight with his own voice. By the early 1970s, he had established himself as one of the most gifted and emotionally resonant soul artists of his time. But success came with heavy burdens. Hathaway struggled with severe depression and was later diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. His battle with mental illness often left him withdrawn, mistrustful, and deeply affected by perceived slights or lack of authenticity in the music industry. His diary, filled with reflections and frustrations, offers a heartbreaking insight into a man whose heart beat in sync with every note he sang but who felt betrayed by those he once admired. Number 1. Al Green. Donny Hathaway admired Al Green's voice, there's no doubt about that. In his private writings, he once described Al's falsetto as butter on gospel bread. He respected the tone, the control, and the ability to sway millions with just a whisper. But beneath that admiration, there was something else: disappointment. Donny believed Al Green had started out as a vessel of real soul, born from church roots and pain-soaked experience, only to abandon that raw authenticity in favor of fame, money, and radio-friendly seduction. In Donny's eyes, Al had crossed a line when he began leaning more into sex appeal than spiritual connection. "He's got a choir boy gift," Donny once wrote, "but he's using it to sell sugar instead of truth." To Donny, music wasn't just entertainment, it was medicine, prayer, protest, and pain. He believed soul artists had a duty to speak for the broken and the weary, not just sell out arenas with love ballads. When Al Green transitioned into more commercial territory, focusing on sensuality over substance, it deeply disturbed Hathaway. He saw it not only as a betrayal of the genre but also as a spiritual drift, something that echoed Donny's own fears of losing himself in an industry that often rewarded surface over soul. The diary entries suggest that while Donny never publicly criticized Al Green, the resentment was real, simmering beneath layers of respect. It wasn't jealousy, it was heartbreak. Donny saw in Al a reflection of what could happen to any artist who let the spotlight dim their truth. And in a world where Hathaway was already losing grip on reality, watching a voice he loved become what he called an echo chamber for profit only deepened his sense of alienation from the industry and those who once inspired him. Number 2. Barry White. Barry White was a sensation. His deep, velvety voice oozed romance, power, and confidence. Millions adored him for his lush orchestrations and signature baritone, but Donny Hathaway wasn't one of them. In a brutally honest diary entry dated 1976, Donny wrote, "Barry sings to the body, but not to the soul." To Hathaway, Barry White represented everything that was wrong with the direction soul music was taking in the mid-70s. Flashy, formulaic, and built for sales, not salvation. Donny felt Barry had mastered the art of seduction but abandoned emotional truth along the way. He viewed Barry's tracks as musical packaging, smooth on the outside but hollow within. "It's like being handed a gold box and opening it to find nothing but perfume," Donny scribbled in frustration. What troubled Donny most wasn't Barry's popularity, but the audience's willingness to accept surface-level emotion in place of real vulnerability. Hathaway believed soul music had to bleed, it had to cry. And to him, Barry White's romantic declarations, however catchy, felt rehearsed, calculated, and almost artificial. He once referred to Barry's hits as love letters that never got wet with tears. In Donny's deeply spiritual and emotionally raw worldview, that kind of polish felt like betrayal. While Barry sang about love, Donny sang about loneliness, repression, longing, and brokenness. There was a gulf between the two men, not just in musical style, but in intent. Donny's mental health struggles had made him hyper-aware of authenticity. He could sense when a singer was performing rather than confessing. And in Barry White's smooth delivery and lush production, Donny heard a performance tailored for applause, not connection. While he never denied Barry's influence or skill, Hathaway's writings make one thing clear: he couldn't trust a voice that never trembled. Number 3. Isaac Hayes. was a towering figure literally and musically. With his bald head, sunglasses, gold chains, and deep commanding voice, he redefined what it meant to be a soul star. Songs like Walk On By and Theme from Shaft turned him into an icon. But to Donny Hathaway, Isaac represented a dangerous shift where image and theatrics began to overpower sincerity and message. In one of his diary entries, Donny wrote, "Isaac wears truth like a costume, it shines, but it isn't skitted out." That line revealed a deep disappointment. Donny didn't hate Isaac Hayes as a man, he was disillusioned with what he felt. Hayes allowed soul music to become spectacle, while Donny understood the power of showmanship. He saw Isaac's approach as excessive, almost theatrical to a fault. He believed Isaac began prioritizing cinematic flair, orchestral build-up and bravado over lyrical vulnerability. "It's all rising strings and no confession," Donny scribbled, pointing to what he considered a lack of emotional anchor in Isaac's music. In Donny's view, Hayes had elevated himself into a myth almost untouchable, larger than life, and in doing so, drifted from the humble roots of soul and gospel that once defined the genre. This wasn't just musical criticism, it was philosophical. Donny believed that music, especially black music, was meant to carry the weight of history, struggle, and spiritual depth. For him, soul wasn't meant to entertain, it was meant to heal. And while Isaac's grand productions thrilled crowds, Donny felt they lacked the quiet, aching truth that soul needed. He admired Isaac's ambition and originality, but in the same breath, questioned whether the message survived the medium. To Donny Hathaway, Hayes had become a master of presentation but had left the pain, the prayer, and the purity behind. Point 4. David Ruffin, the legendary lead singer of The Temptations, possessed one of the most distinctive voices in soul. Music raspy, desperate, electric with emotion. To the world he was brilliance incarnate. But to Donny Hathaway, that brilliance came with shadows. In his diary, Donny wrote, "He sings like he's dying, but lives like he's invincible. That's the problem." It was a critique that cut deeper than style, it was about character. Donny felt David Ruffin's onstage vulnerability was a mask, a performance that didn't match the arrogance and ego he displayed behind closed doors. Hathaway had long believed that true soul music had to come from lived experience, from humility, pain, and spiritual openness. And while Ruffin's voice sounded like all those things, Donny questioned whether it meant to. He was troubled by what he called Ruffin's false humility, a performer who acted broken for applause, yet carried himself like royalty when the spotlight was off. In a particularly raw entry, Donny wrote, "People don't hear the hunger in his voice, they hear the hunger for attention." The contrast disturbed him. To Donny, Ruffin's internal contradictions made his music emotionally confusing. How could someone sing so convincingly about heartbreak and suffering, yet treat people in real life with coldness, pride, and volatility? Hathaway, who struggled deeply with mental illness and emotional fragility, couldn't separate music from morality. For him, authenticity wasn't a tool, it was a necessity. And David Ruffin, for all his vocal power, seemed to Donny like someone who had learned to imitate pain without confronting it. The resentment wasn't rooted in competition, it was spiritual disappointment. Donny didn't just want soul to sound real, he wanted it to be real. And in David Ruffin, he saw a voice that soared but a heart he simply couldn't believe.